Today's debate will be between two of my personalities, the pirate straw hat Grant and Jay. The hat will tell you who is addressing the audience. If the hat is on, you are hearing from Grant, and if the hat is off, you are hearing from Jay. The debate topic will be if a really large group agrees to do an act without the knowledge of it being illegal, should the RICO Act apply? Jay will be arguing for the RICO Act should apply, and Grant will be arguing for it should not. In this instance, Jay will make his initial argument, so without further ado, I will let Jay start with his 1 minute main argument. The RICO Act is immutable, and lack of knowledge of the fact that you are engaging in an illegal activity shouldn't matter. If 1,000 people set out to do something illegal, then they should all face that penalty. I can't think of a single way it could harm society for everyone to be responsible for our own actions. If you set out to do anything like fraud with others, then no one should be able to take the blame, leaving 999 members of the conspiracy to roam free. It would just leave too many people walking free, and a crime organization could do a bunch of ridiculous stuff like hiring a patsy whose only job is to take the fall. Everyone in the organization has to be accountable. The size of the criminal conspiracy should not even be a consideration when applying this law. I'm very interested to see what counterargument there is for not enforcing this act on a conspiracy. All right, Grant's 1 minute rebuttal. Conspiracies, by very definition, are illegal, but unfortunately, the definition of conspiracy and the definition of conspire have a discrepancy. When you conspire, your desire is to cause harm, but causing someone else harm isn't actually illegal in all circumstances. Perhaps you sit around psychologically abusing a classmate or coworker. There's no law against it. And if you sign 30 people up to engage in this act, it still isn't a conspiracy until you all come to the conclusion to break the law. At this point, it becomes a conspiracy. Now imagine that you have signed 1 million people up to conspire to harm someone, but in a legal way. If suddenly 4 of the people have an illegal idea to cause harm to the individual, even though the conspiracy is 1 million people, should the 4 go to jail or all 1 million people? All 1 million people agreed to cause harm, so they are all conspirators. But 4 people would get them all thrown in jail. 1 million people going to jail would be a burden on the system and cause calamity. The RICO Act has circumstances that are only applicable at a small level. All right, Grant's 1 minute main argument. There are many disastrous things that can result in the application of the RICO Act. Let us take political parties. They constantly conspire to harm their opposition. Let us say that someone comes up with an idea that breaks the law, but is somehow missed that the law is being broken. Suddenly, the entire political party is now a criminal. What happens if halfway through a session of Congress, half the Congress is jailed? We would no longer be able to field a quorum. Suddenly, Congress isn't functional until elections can be reheld in the districts affected. A tricky political operative could figure out a way to jail the entire opposing party with this law. If we apply the RICO Act against all the people involved in the conspiracy, then we suddenly have situations where everybody in the country could become criminals. I feel not having restrictions on the size of the people who can be charged at once is disastrous. Applying this law on too large a group is just way too dangerous, and it is too much power for one judge to wield. All right, Jay's 1 minute rebuttal. Sorry about that. It is highly unlikely that an entire political party could be wiped out by this law. Plus, we can't do anything if we were going to use outlandish and unrealistic possibilities to govern our every move. You could also argue that because the RICO Act can be printed on a piece of paper, which can cause paper cuts, it is a dangerous law. Besides, if an entire political party commits a crime, then maybe they should go to jail. That is a better result than allowing a bunch of criminals to be in charge of the entire country. You are blaming the law for the results of criminal activity. But the truth of the matter is that if you commit a law, you need to be punished, and the RICO Act allows us to do that. I have no problem sending 1 million criminals to jail. We have to defend ourselves against criminals, and the RICO Act is a fine way to do that. If 1 million people were to steal a car at the same time, should we look the other way because there are just too many of them? All right, it's still Jay, but now it's his closing argument. The RICO Act as it stands has enabled the police to fight organized crimes in ways that never could be fought before. It has proven a boon time and again. It needs to apply in all circumstances, and the idea that exceptions should be made for too large a group is nuts. If a circumstance does occur where it is too detrimental to society, then our forefathers have put in place a failsafe that can always be used. The President of the United States can just pardon all the people convicted under the RICO statute. Imagine how many people, innocent people, were saved from organized crime from this law. If we place a limit on the number of people who can be charged using this statute, then we are effectively nullifying this statute and the great value that it provides us. Suggesting that large organizations be exempt from the law is dangerous, and I am against putting limits on the size of conspiracies that can be charged with this law. Grant's 1 minute closing argument. This would never happen, but the following scenario is a potential possibility. Let's say you have an organization that commits a crime and somehow swindles everyone in the country to engage in said crime willfully. Now let's say that a single person is the target of that crime. The only way to proceed would be to legally jail every person in the country and leave that one person free. Could we do that or not? RICO leaves that as a possible option, as far-fetched as it sounds. We cannot apply the RICO Act in all circumstances, which makes it a bad law. It would be a good law if it stated conspire instead of conspiracy, but where would we be if we were no longer able to conspire? The mechanism in place to remove political opponents for each party is to conspire against each other. How would the political system clean itself of unsavory characters if we took away our politicians' right to conspire? If we can't apply the law due to a large number of people being involved in the conspiracy, then it is a bad law. The size of the conspiracy has to be taken into account before the law is applied.